Hi guys, Craig here at Amalgamingle and welcome to today's video, and it's one close to my heart. Back in September 2021 at the PlayStation Showcase, we were shown a teaser for the remake of one of my favourite games of all time, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Often called KOTOR for those of you not in the know. The game was being developed by Aspyr Media, the same guys who had ported the original game, as well as KOTOR 2, to iOS, Switch and other mobile devices, as well as many other games. For me and many others, this was big news. There is no Star Wars game more universally loved than KOTOR, and I love this game. I know what I'm going to say is controversial, but I prefer KOTOR 2, despite its incomplete state and flaws, but both games are easily in my top 10 favourite games of all time, and that is not hyperbole. But KOTOR put BioWare on the map for a lot of people, and had a rich engrossing story, memorable characters, and one of the biggest twists in a video game ever. And the news was a big win for Sony because this was going to be an exclusive to PS5, PC, and I believe it was coming to other consoles later, but I can't seem to find confirmation of this and seems to be nothing more than a rumour. But the love for this game was so strong I could easily see people buying a PS5 just for this remake alone. This was also a big deal for another reason. This was going to be one of the first modern Star Wars games to be released outside of the exclusivity deal EA had with Disney, an exclusivity deal that has not sat well with many Star Wars fans and is set to end this year. Given a negative fan response to this exclusivity deal, I highly doubt Disney will be renewing that deal with EA, and then they can go back to ruin other franchises. But we'll see when that time comes around. But back to KOTOR. After the teaser, we got nothing. We heard nothing. But that's to be expected after a teaser. Lots of games show off a teaser and then disappear for a while, sometimes too long that it drops off the radar of gamers around the world. Look at the long list of teasers for Cyberpunk to see what I mean. But this is not just a Star Wars game, but the most beloved Star Wars game ever. This was going to linger in the minds of gamers for a long time to come. But we heard nothing until around the 26th of July 2022. Almost a year later, an article was posted on Bloomberg by Jason Schreier that did not fill me with hope. The development had been put on hold and it had been delayed indefinitely. I'll link an article for you to read at your own leisure, but I'll sum up the article for you. On the 30th of June 2022, Aspyr finalised the demo of the game, known as a vertical slice, which basically amounts to a section of the game to show the direction development was going to production partners at Lucasfilm and Sony. According to the article, the developers were excited about it and felt like they were on track, so what happened next came as a shock to the developers. Aspyr fired design director Brad Pintz and art director Jason Miner. Aspyr's studio heads told staff that the vertical slice wasn't going in the direction they wanted and that the project would be paused indefinitely. So what happened? Now, I've watched as many videos and read as many articles as I can, and all of them cite the aforementioned Bloomberg article as their source, so that's what I'll be leading with. So today I wanted to speculate on the project and indulge myself with some fan service about what I think a KOTOR remake should be. For those of you who have played this game, feel free to skip this section. I'll put timestamps in the description. But for those of you who have either not heard of it or have not played it, I'll sum up the basic plot. Set almost 4,000 years before the original trilogy, KOTOR sees you play as either a male or female of one of three classes: Scout, Scoundrel and Soldier, all with varying skills, pros and cons, who is fighting against the Sith Empire being led by Darth Malak. You venture to various different planets in an effort to stop him and his forces from conquering the galaxy. That is the story in its most basic synopsis, as anyone who hasn't played the game and is interested should experience the story firsthand. Gameplay wise, KOTOR is a turn-based RPG that released on the original Xbox and was also on PC. You gather teammates, 9 in total, and all of them are memorable in their own way. Especially fan favourite HK-47, probably the most badass robot in video games. You gain XP in the traditional way, fighting enemies, speed checks, quests and other such things. The worlds are quite large for the era of gamer they come from, although as a critique, KOTOR is infamous for its backtracking despite its greatness. There is a wide variety of skills and powers for you and your party members, as well as a plethora of armour, weapons and even mods to be used on said armour and weapons, a mechanic BioWare would use again in Mass Effect 1 and 3. But dumbing down the plot and game mechanics does not do it justice in explaining why this game is so loved. You really have to experience it for yourself. The choices you make that can affect the ending, the way you talk to companions that can also affect whether they live or die based on your choices, how each world feels unique and different, and so many other reasons. Sorry to keep gushing, but you really should play this game if you haven't.
Is this wise? The ancient Jedi sealed this archway. If we pass beyond this door, we can never go back.
The reason why KOTOR is such a big deal is because of the scope of the game for the time it came out. If you look at the Star Wars games that came out before KOTOR, you'll see that while some of them have tried to have stories and characters for you to play as and get to know, a lot of times they were limited to the technology they were released for. Being released on the original Xbox gave KOTOR a wider audience than just PC gamers. It allowed console peasants such as myself to play a game the likes of which many had never played before. If I might use another example from the same year, I'm reminded of the Elder Scrolls Morrowind. Both were bold games with a large scope. Admittedly, Morrowind was more ambitious, but they are both seen as milestones in their game series and often the fan favourite. Fans of Star Wars as a whole might find the idea of a KOTOR remake a bit baffling, given that everything to do with the game is now part of the Legends continuity and is no longer considered canon since the acquisition. But it also shows that Disney are willing to give the fans something they want, a single-player Star Wars game. I'm sorry to keep repeating myself, but the single-player experience of KOTOR is fantastic, and it could show a step in the right direction for the Star Wars franchise, at least in terms of gaming. Yes, I know about Fallen Order, but most of the recent Star Wars games have been more focused on multiplayer than single player, and while I have nothing against multiplayer, but the reason people love Star Wars is the worlds, characters and stories, and KOTOR has that in spades. Not to mention that since Disney's acquisition of the Star Wars brand, they've only released 12 games, and while that sounds like a lot, some of them are mobile games or not really full-blown titles, and that's not counting the expansions for the Old Republic MMO.
This is but a taste of the dark side.
They promised power. Now they wield it.
From what I've looked up, it seems to me that Aspyr Media are known for porting games across multiple platforms, and like I said in the intro, they had already ported KOTOR and its sequel to multiple platforms, so there was no reason to think anything could go wrong. So where did it go wrong? By the time the teaser trailer was revealed, the game had been in development for nearly 3 years. 3 years! And all we got was a teaser? Now I know as technology advances and consoles and PCs become more powerful, gamers expect more from their games, but in my opinion, there should have been something more to show than just a teaser of Darth Revan. If I'd have known at the time that the game had been in development for that long, I wouldn't have been so excited. To bring it back to the Elder Scrolls, the teaser for Elder Scrolls 6 was shown in 2018, and while I'm also excited by this, the fact that it's now coming up 5 years and nothing new has been announced, my excitement wanes every passing day. But at least we have Starfield to see what Bethesda was up to and will be bringing to a full sci-fi setting. But I digress. In June 2022, Aspyr Media heads showed off a game demo to Lucasfilm and Sony. It was reported that the development heads were happy with where the game was going, but apparently Lucasfilm and Sony were not, and as I stated in the beginning, the art director and design director were fired. This was seen as a shock to the other staff of Aspyr, but whether or not other people have been fired and not been reported on, I don't know, but that's just speculation on my part. When it comes to this vertical slice, I highly doubt we'll ever find out what section of the game they showed or why it was considered to be in the wrong direction, but the month earlier in May, parent company Embracer announced that Saber Interactive would also join the project. The Bloomberg article also says that some people at Aspyr believe Saber would take over the project completely. A speculated release date of 2025 is suggested in the article, but that, to me, does not fill me with hope. Based on everything I've read, it seems that many have speculated that the developers at Aspyr are inexperienced in helming such a daunting task. Now, I'm in no way having a dig at these people. Creating a game from the ground up cannot be easy, especially a game that is turning 20 years old this year. On average, console generations last about 6 years or so. The PS5 was released in 2020, so if that date is accurate, that is nearing the end of the PS5's life cycle before the PS6 is going to be announced, so any excitement for the game will have truly waned. Oh sure, there'll be diehards who can't wait for the game regardless, but those won't be the majority of players eager to get their hands on a KOTOR remake. Remember, every year a new set of kids are shown Star Wars for the first time, and a lot of them will fall into the franchise wholeheartedly. I mean, when I was 8, I wanted to be a Jedi. Moving away from the Bloomberg article, some of the other articles have their own speculations and news. On the Star Wars fandom site, the article leads with a quote from Ryan Treadwell, lead producer at Aspyr Media and the KOTOR remake. quote. With Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic Remake, our hope is to give both series newcomers and long-term fans an experience that can live alongside the very best modern releases. We're rebuilding it from the ground up with the latest tech to match the groundbreaking standard of innovation established by the original, all while staying true to its revered story. End quote. I can't find out whether this quote was made before or after the vertical slice was shown to Lucasfilm. The fandom article also states that multiple members of the original KOTOR team from BioWare were brought on to work on the remake, which does give me more hope, but who these people are and what departments they work on I cannot say. I should also state that the great Jennifer Hale was being brought back onto the project, the voice actress of Bastila and the one true Shepard. I couldn't find the article itself, but on IGN's website I found an update from August last year that stated Bloomberg reported that the remake was moving from Aspyr to Saber Interactive's Eastern European studio, with parent company Embracer not expecting a delay, though no official release date has been stated. To be honest, I feel sorry for everyone at Aspyr who has worked on this project, both past and present. It's obvious these guys have a passion for Star Wars and KOTOR, given how many times they ported the game and how much praise has been heaped on said ports. It puts Aspyr in an awful position. If they were to helm this project and release a mediocre or downright bad remake, then Star Wars fans will never let them forget it. And if they are slowly pushed out of development, then they'll always be known as a studio that couldn't handle the KOTOR remake. And what this means for the future of Aspyr, we can only speculate, and I sincerely hope this is just a bump in the road. Plenty of developers, both AAA and indie, all make mistakes, and I hope this doesn't result in another studio lost when all they made was a simple mistake that they can learn and move on from. And that brings us to now, where there is next to no news on the remake, and it's highly unlikely we will hear anything until around Star Wars Day in May. Although, if we do, feel free to come back to this video and comment on how wrong I am. So with that out of the way, I wanted to go into what I think a KOTOR remake should be like, so forgive me as I indulge the little nerd living inside me.
They must be stopped.
Simply put, the game needs to stand on its own legs. If the game is remade as the original, but with better character models, lip syncing, environments and everything else we would come to expect for a current gen game, remake or original IP, then it would be a worthy successor to the original. But for this section I'm going to use another game remake as a jumping off point, Final Fantasy VII. At first this might seem like an odd choice, but both games have a lot in common surprisingly. Both are beloved games from their respective consoles and franchises, both often cited as the best in the series, both are turn-based, allow you to switch between characters, and are both revered for their characters and stories. And of course, both are RPGs. The remake of FF7 was not only loved by long-time fans, but also a way for new gamers to play a game that was over 20 years old and may not stand up to the scrutiny of modern gaming eyes. And it stood on its own because while the character's setting and story is relatively the same, the fact that the game became a third-person action RPG with real-time combat and fully voiced characters gave the game an aura of freshness that allowed it to stand on its own. Now, I'm not saying that a KOTOR remake would have to follow everything FF7 did, especially when it comes to voice actors. In the original game, as well as KOTOR 2, your character speaks in text and everyone else's voice, similar to the Elder Scrolls and the Outer Worlds. Having a fully voiced character wouldn't be a bad thing, look at Mass Effect and Dragon Age Inquisition, but then you get games like Fallout 4, which, while a game I loathe the voice actor and actress for your character. A constant monotone that can often pull you out of the moment. Then there's also another reason FF7 was received so well. A lot of the original developers of the PS1 game were at the helm of the remake, including the original character designer, writer, producers, and even the original composer. Like I said earlier, it's known that several members of the original KOTOR development team at BioWare are on board this project, but what roles they play and what roles they played in the original development is unclear. For all we know, they might just have 10 T-boys on the payroll. Kidding. And when it comes to the voice acting, like I said, Jennifer Hale is on board reprising her role as Bastila, so my thoughts are that maybe they would try and use the original cast and have them re-record their dialogue. Whether or not that would be a good thing or not, given it's been 20 years and voices change over time, who can say? If that would be the case, then I would be deeply saddened because one of the original voice actors, John Sigant, I think that's how you say his surname, died of cancer in 2017, and he voices easily the most badass character of the game, Canderous Ordo.
Okay, we're inside. Now all we have to do is figure out a way to get past the Ebon Hawk security system, and we can get the rest of your group off this planet. Watch yourself, Callow. You may be the newest Cath Hound in the pack, but you aren't top dog yet.
As someone who's played this game dozens of times, it would be hard for me to put another voice to this character. He is voiced perfectly, so whether or not he would be recast or they would use modern high-tech wizardry to upscale the already existing dialogue, I don't know, but it's something I personally would have to look past, and I'm sure I'm not alone. There are only 3 things I think a remake of KOTOR would need to change. Firstly, the combat. I think making it real time like FF7 instead of turn-based would be better. Flinging your lightsaber around, hurling powers left, right and centre, or even just using grenades and blasters would be exhilarating and would also make some of the boss fights a lot tougher than they are initially. And it could also show off the power of the PS5. The second thing I would have them add is either a fast travel system, whether that's a speed, a transit hub, or mounts, or something else. As I said earlier, one of the many things KOTOR is infamous for is the backtracking. Completing quests can sometimes feel like a chore, especially on the planet of Manaan, where every section of the map looks like everywhere else. And the final thing I would have them change is the fighter minigame that unlocks once you can travel the galaxy. In the original game, whenever you travel between planets, there's a chance that you get attacked by Sith fighters. At first it's a fun novelty, but it wears thin pretty quick when you've done it 20 times and you come to realise how repetitive it is. And I also don't think you get experience for it. They could change this by having it be more random or change up the type of attacks, small freighters, boarding parties, stuff like that. Now I know how ambitious this all sounds, but that's the point of this section. This is me indulging myself. A game like this would be possible, but it would take years to implement, and like the FF7 remake, it would have to be made from the ground up, and the whole development team would have to be on the same page at all times. And don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting a KOTOR remake to be anything like what I would want them to change, but even just a straight up remake would still be a great game, regardless of its flaws. But before we close out today's video, I wanted to bring up one last thing. If you want to know what a next-gen KOTOR game could really look like, then there's a YouTube channel you should check out called Unreal Cinema. This channel looks to be from a dedicated bunch of fans who have taken it upon themselves to recreate KOTOR in the Unreal Engine 4 and 5. Most of the videos are like development diaries that show how they have taken iconic images from the game and upscaled them, from Sith fighters, the Ebon Hawk, Darth Revan, Darth Malak, Bastila, HK-47, and even some of the locations you visit like Anchorage on Tatooine, as well as the intro cinematic. Now the creator isn't making a game but doing it more as a mini-series and turning it into more of an episodic fan film, but it still shows what this game could look like, and I am eagerly excited to see what the finished product will look like. I'll leave a link to the channel in the description so you can check them out for yourself if you haven't already. And there we go, that's everything we know so far, as well as my own little indulgences. What do you think of this whole fiasco? Are you still excited for the KOTOR remake? Have you played the game before? Do you think it will ever come out for the PS5? What would you add or change to the KOTOR remake if you could? Let me know that and whatever else you're thinking down in the comments below. I've been Craig, this has been Amalgamingle, and thanks for watching.